Alrighty, so today of all days, we have an exciting topic. And I actually have a couple of articles I'd like to go over. I think we're going to cover this pretty well. I'm pretty proud of kind of what I've found so far. So the topic for today is going to be bail reform. And what brought this on was this article I saw. It's from the New York Post. I don't know how people feel about that, but it is what it is. The headline reads, New York judges agree with Mayor Adams on fixing bail reform law. Now, Mayor Eric Adams is the new mayor of the city of New York. He is a former New York City police officer, and he ran on a tough on crime or anti-crime platform when he was running for office. One of the things that he has identified as a major problem, or a major contributor, I should say, to the recent rise in crime is the bail reform law that was passed. I believe it was passed in 2019, then it was further amended in 2020. There's actually an article that I'm going to read from the ACLU, of all places, that's going to talk a little bit about what bail means. So I'm not going to get into that now. But one of the things that happened as a result of this law is that people were no longer being held after they were being arrested. They were being arrested and then just released without any out-of-pocket expense and of no cost to them. So what we started to see in the state of New York is repeat offenders began to rise. So now that Mayor Adams is in charge, he is, I guess you could say, he is lobbying state lawmakers to amend the bail reform law to give judges a little bit more power on whether or not they're going to hold people or make people pay a fee or a fine in order to get out of jail. So I'm actually going to start with this article I found in the ACLU, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. It starts to go off the rails at a certain point, and that's where I'm going to stop. So it begins, on any given day in 2020, roughly 630,000 people were locked up in local jails. The majority of them had not been convicted of a crime. After arrest, wrongful or not, I love how they do that, like wrongful or not. Well, not just not, but most arrests are completely not just justified, but most people that are arrested are guilty. Regardless, after an arrest, wrongful or not, a person's ability to leave jail and return home to fight the charges typically depends on access to money. That's because in virtually all jurisdictions, people are required to pay cash bail in order to secure their freedom. Originally, bail was designed to ensure people return to court and face the charges against them. And that's true. You used to be arrested, and then you'd have to pay a little bit of bail money, get out of jail, and then if you beat the charge, you can get that money back. Now we know there's a simple solutions like this, or now we know simple solutions like court reminders can actually achieve that purpose. And the money on bail systems has morphed into the one that perpetuates a widespread wealth-based incarceration. The pre-trial incarceration caused by unaffordable bail is the single greatest driver of convictions and is responsible for the ballooning of our nation's jail and prison populations. Then it goes into poor Americans and people of colors often can't afford Poor Americans and people of color often can't afford to come up with the money for bail, leaving them incarcerated in jail awaiting trial, sometimes for months, even years. Meanwhile, wealthy people accused of the same crime can buy their freedom and return home. Now, I understand what they're saying there. If you have a poor person who's arrested for, say, domestic violence and held on $40,000 bond, they're not going to get out. They're going to stay in jail until their trial. If you have a wealthy person, they're going to get out. And I understand that. I think that, well, and there's also something, at least in the system where I work, where if someone is arrested and has a high bond and they're unable to get out, and after they've spent a certain amount of time in jail, that should be taken into account, and maybe some of those people should be released after spending a significant amount of time in jail if a trial is not upcoming, because you have the right in this country to a speedy trial. So I do think that possibly one bail reform technique would be you set bail numbers, and if people stay in jail for a certain amount of time, they can earn that bail and be released. I think that's a sensible thing and possible compromise here. But of course, we don't do anything sensible in this country. So what the state of New York did was they wrote this bail law that said people with pretty much all nonviolent misdemeanors, so shoplifting, drunken, disorderly, I don't know, misdemeanors, like, you know what they are, assault, maybe not assault. I don't know if that was covered in that. I bet you it was misdemeanor assault. These people get arrested and then they get released immediately. So it's almost like you're just handing them a ticket, and who knows if they're going to show up to court or not. It's even being done for a lot of felonies. Burglary is one of those felonies. So the result of that is, this is another story from the New York Post. And this one's kind of funny. They use some alliteration and some name calling. But here's a shoplifter. They call him Sir Isaac Luton. Serial shoplifter Isaac Rodriguez was nabbed 50 times this year alone, yet kept getting dumped back on the streets. Rodriguez, 22, currently has 23 open cases in Queens, part of a mind-boggling rap sheet that lists 74 arrests dating back to 2015. So the thing that New York did with their bail reform bill is they made it so that judges can't hold on to someone like him who's been arrested 50 times in the same year. I think anybody with an ounce of common sense would realize that your laws were oversweeping or overreaching. I think overreaching is the right way to say it. And that's what happens the majority of the time. Rather than just urging compromise or something sensible, they feel like they have to go all the way to the opposite end. And then here's another one. This is a guy that the officers have called the Teflon burglar. Accused serial burglar Juan Del Vela was so adept at dodging jail that the cops came to call the 32-year-old criminal Teflon. Said he already had more than 30 busts on his rap sheets. I don't like the way these are worded. He already had 30 arrests and 5 open cases in Manhattan and Brooklyn when the Manhattan judge ordered him released without bail on August 15th. So this guy had been arrested 30 times and had 5 open cases, and he was released without having to pay anything to be released. I get it that they're saying that these people are not convicted, but in order to arrest and charge somebody, you need to have at least probable cause. And I think that probable cause, and enough of it, is grounds to hold on to somebody, especially someone that has been arrested this many times and has this many open cases. And it says within 10 days, cops said that he was being sought for more than a dozen burglaries after investigators found 20 laptops, a stolen 9mm handgun, and drugs in his Brooklyn public housing, in his apartment in a Brooklyn housing complex. So this bail reform is taking guys like this guy who has over 70 arrests in a 6.5-7 year period, and then this guy who has over 30 arrests, and they're basically not doing anything to stop him from committing crimes. They're lumping him into this group over here where they're saying that, oh, they're just poor and they're unable to pay for this stuff, so we shouldn't hold on to them. There's got to be something in the middle that will allow for this stuff to make sense. I don't know how else to say it. So in this article here, I won't necessarily go through it because I think I've rambled on enough. But what Eric Adams is saying, and what these judges are saying that they agree with, is that they deserve to have a little bit of discretion when it comes to handing out bail. And I 100% agree. Just like officers on the street should have some discretion on whether or not they're going to arrest somebody. I saw it in my jurisdiction where the city attorney's office and whoever else is in cahoots with them that puts down these orders to the police department, they took away our ability to arrest all nonviolent misdemeanors. Now, we don't make a lot of arrests for nonviolent misdemeanors, so it's not a huge deal, but it becomes a big deal when it actually is. Like if somebody is really drunk at a party and they start pushing people around and it looks like they're going to start a major fight or a brawl, often we're called to the scene and we try our best to get this person to leave the party. If they're unwilling to leave the party, we don't necessarily have the authority to evict them from this party. So we have to find a way to force their hand. Now, if they're causing alarm to a large group of people and that whole group of people says, hey, we're scared because he's gonna explode, he's gonna do something, then we can arrest that person for a crime of disorderly conduct. That's a misdemeanor non-violent offense that gives us the ability to put him under arrest, take him to jail, where he can sleep off whatever the hell is wrong with him. When the city attorney and whoever else it was took our ability to do that out of our hands, often we would have to show up, talk to this guy, say, please don't do anything, and then leave. And then shortly after we left, he's grabbing a beer bottle, smashing somebody over the head, and now we have a violent crime that we have to address. This is not too different from that. It's just at the next level. A judge should be able to look at someone who has 74 arrests in a 6-year period, or 50 arrests in a 1-year period, or if they have 5 open cases for burglary, a judge should be able to say, you know what? It's probably not a good idea to put that guy back on the street. And I found there's another article I had that I don't really want to get onto all the details, but it said basically since they passed this bail reform, here it is, 41% of people that were released were getting rearrested. And depending on the way they look at the data, there's one showed that 23% had been rearrested, but in the previous period, prior to this new law, only 8% of these people had been rearrested. These are people that are on supervised release. So there's a lot of data out there that shows that this stuff is not working. It definitely needs to change. My one concern, because we talk about how the pendulum is swinging. We talk about that a lot. The pendulum swung way out here into crazy land with regard to the police and criminal justice. And that pendulum is starting to swing back. And that's what we're seeing. That's why Mayor Eric Adams was elected, because he's part of that pendulum that's swinging back in support of the court system, or at least a system that holds people accountable, as well as in support of police. Now, as that pendulum swings, I just hope that it doesn't swing too wild, that it goes up to a point where we can agree that this is reasonable and kind of go from there. So I don't know if I made any sense or not, but those are going to be my thoughts on bail reform and some of the stuff that's happening in New York. If you agree or disagree, please let me know below. I do enjoy reading your comments, and I don't know, I'd like to know if I'm off base here. So thank you for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.